Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it was sent to me by one of our sisters. She is there in Europe. Wow, witchcraft is just everywhere. Witchcraft is just everywhere. So the message that she sent to me, it reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? My brother, I was taught how to become a witch when I was still very young. And I think when I was somewhere around 8 years, that was when I was taught how to become a witch. My mom, she passed away when I was 7 years old. That was when my mom passed away. I do not even properly remember my mom's face because I was still very young. When my mom passed away, she was pregnant with her second child, but unfortunately what happened was that my mom, when she was now in labor, she then died during childbirth. Then my little brother was the one who was left behind, and then my grandma then took that child that had been left by my mom after she had died during childbirth. So after the funeral, then my father's relatives and my mother's relatives, they started fighting a lot. That was when my grandmother said, well, you can fight, but I am not going to let my grandkids suffer. So my grandmother took my sibling when he was still like 1 day old. That was when my grandmother started taking care of him, even though we were staying in Harare. But I remember that me and my grandmother, we used to drive after we would have left my sibling with our maid so that we can go and buy goat milk. We used to go and buy this goat milk by this other farm that was close to Beatrice, where they were keeping these goats. That is where we used to go and buy the goat milk so that she can feed my little sibling. But unfortunately, the child passed away. At that time, I didn't know that what my grandmother will do late at night was that my grandmother will take this child that had been left behind by my mother. Then she would place this child on her breast and the child will start sucking, but there was no milk that was coming out. It was more just like poison that was coming out. This thing, it kept on happening over and over again until the child unfortunately passed away. For you to create those things that they call the tokoloshis, the child that is newly born has to die before 3 months. That is when the child is transformed and it can be made into that tokoloshi. So my grandmother wanted this child to survive for only about 2 months or more so that the child can be transformed and it become a tokoloshi. That is exactly what happened. After my grandmother had showed me that indeed she was a witch, that was when she told me everything that had actually happened. My grandmother said that at that time when my mom was pregnant, she once had a fight with this other woman from that same area, and my grandmother, you can actually think that she was just a local village woman. No, my grandmother, she was actually a headmaster at this other school that is there in Harare. She was a headmistress, my grandmother, but she was a witch. So she then started fighting with this other lady. When she fought with that lady doing their witchcraft stuff, that was when my grandmother lost the battle. When she lost the battle, that was when that witch said, I am going to destroy you, and after I have destroyed you, I am going to take all of your children. When she said that I am going to take all of your children, she didn't mean like a physical kids that she had given birth to, but those spirits that we use when we are bewitching people. So my grandmother, she loved these spirits more than she loved her own children. And then my grandmother decided that it was far much better for her to sacrifice my mother, since she was the one who was pregnant. And a woman, when a woman is pregnant, she is at her weakest point in her life. That is when it is easy for someone to bewitch her, because she will be carrying something that will be living inside her body. Then my grandmother told that woman who had defeated her, and then that is how this witch started helping my grandmother grandmother so that my grandmother can feed the charms to her daughter. My grandmother was the one who actually fed her own daughter all of these charms. After my grandmother had fed these charms to my mother, then my mother started suffering. She suffered throughout her pregnancy. So when my mother went to the labor to give birth, that was when my mother was said to have lost a lot of blood, but it was something that was just spiritual. A natural condition was needed so that people can say that she died because she had lost so much blood, but that was not the case. My grandmother was the one who sacrificed her own daughter. The night that she told me this story, I cried, my brother. I cried a lot, but my grandmother said that she gave me a lot of herbs so that I can have a strong heart. As we are speaking, I can even feel that I now have a heart that is as hard as a stone. I do not have any feelings for any human being. If you anger me, then I am going to do something bad to you without even ever regretting. All the people that I have sacrificed, all the people that I have bewitched. Even when I came here to Europe, I bewitched a lot of ladies, the ones that wanted to control me at work. Those were the ones that I started to bewitch. Most of them, they died with different illnesses like your high blood pressure, and the easiest one these days, it is your cancer. It is easy for someone, when people say that she has died because of cancer, there is no one that is going to investigate according to the African ways like they used to do in the past. After someone has died, then they would go to consult so as to know what really killed that person. So cancer is the easiest because right now everyone is just suffering from cancer. So my brother, that when I came here to Europe, I continued with the work that my grandmother had taught me. Even when I was still in high school, I used to bewitch some of my classmates. I always wanted to be number one in class. If there was anyone who was trying to be better than I was, I would make sure that I would bewitch that person. And when I bewitched these classmates of mine, it was like for life. A lot of people suffered because of me, because I didn't want anyone to seem to be as if they were much better than I was. After high school, that was when I went to nursing school. When I was in nursing school, I struggled a lot, my brother. I really struggled. It was a time in my life when I was saying, God, please just give me a child. But the problem why I was unable to give birth, it was because of the sins that I had committed. My grandmother had not given me these other herbs, and unfortunately, she had passed away. She was supposed to give me some herbs because from a very young age, she had been feeding me with all of this human flesh. So for me to be able to give birth later on in my life, she was supposed to give me these herbs that were going to wash that flesh that was inside my body. But unfortunately, my grandmother, then she passed away. When my grandmother passed away, I tried to approach several ladies, the ones that I knew very well in our area, that were witches. And when they heard that my grandmother had not given me the herbs to cleanse my womb, they laughed at me because this is what they wanted. You know, witches, naturally, they are just evil. They had hated my grandmother a lot. Some of them, they were not as powerful as my grandmother, so this was like their revenge time. Some of them, they even gave me more herbs to make sure that my womb will stay closed and I won't be able to give birth. There was another woman who is a witch who assisted me. This witch, she said, for you to give birth, you know that the child that you are going to give birth to is not going to be a child. I said, what do you mean when you say that I am going to get pregnant? My husband is going to impregnate me, but I won't be carrying a human child. What exactly am I going to be carrying? She then said that it is not going to be a normal human being. You have to know that. And this is like a spirit that I was going to give birth to. I was really desperate at that time, and I was married. And you know, in our culture, when you fail to give birth, when you fail to conceive, it doesn't matter if they are afraid of you. They will start talking and they will start telling your husband to find someone who can actually give him a child. When I had this, that was when I said, it is okay, let me just sacrifice my womb. I then sacrificed my womb, and I said, whatever fruits that is going to be produced by my womb, then let it be. If it is going to be a tokoloshi, let it be. My brother, I fell pregnant after I had said that prayer. When I fell pregnant, sometimes I would feel the baby really rocking in my womb. Sometimes I'll just feel this silence as if I was carrying something that was already dead. But whenever I would go to my personal friend, who was also someone who loved these charms and stuff, so she was the one who would say, no, the baby is okay, the baby is okay. But she didn't know a lot about the charms that I had done. I then gave birth. I had a home birth because I was scared, because I didn't know what kind of a child that was going to come out of me. But the child that came out of me was as normal as any other normal child. I came here with my husband. I was okay with my husband. I never had like that feeling of bewitching him, because I had loved him naturally and I tried to protect him by all means. But when I came here, the problem was that the relatives, they started controlling him, and he started also trying to control me, and I do not want to be controlled by anyone. My husband said that his mother, my mother-in-law, had told him that we need to know that even though we are in Europe, but there will come a time when we would want to return back home, so we had to prepare for that time. Then said, I want to see what is going to happen if his son dies. Will she be able to control me? Because right now she is saying, my son, my son, my son, you must return back home. My son, you must send us some money so that we can buy a property for you. My son, you must return back home. I then said, well, your son is going to return back home, but in a coffin. That is how my husband died. Do not ask me how exactly my husband died, but he just passed away. After he had passed away, the relatives, they started going around. One of the uncles actually called me. He had the nerves to call me from Zim. And they told me that they had gone to visit this other traditional healer, and they knew that I was the one who had caused the death of my husband. I just dropped the call and I immediately went to work. I summoned some of my grandmother's former witches, told them that I knew that they hated my grandmother a lot, but now I needed their assistance, and they told me that they could assist me, but the only way for them to assist me, I had to breastfeed my son until he dies. I said, how am I going to breastfeed my son until he dies? One of the old ladies said, like me, I am still breastfeeding my son. She then pulled out her breast and she squeezed her breast, and I saw that there was milk that was actually coming out of her breast, as old as she was, but there was milk that was coming out of her breast. She then told me that she did the same process. She sacrificed one of her son. She reminded me of her other son, the one who seemed to be mentally ill, the one who never leaves her side. It is because she is still breastfeeding her son. That is how I started again breastfeeding my son. One night when I was sleeping, at that time, my son, he was 15 years old. He came to my room and he said that he was really scared. I said, what are you scared of? He said that he's just scared. He feels as if there are some old women. He said, I can feel that there are some old women that are with me in my bedroom, and I knew that this had begun. And immediately when I said, you can come and sleep with Ma and she and my son, and I said to my son, you can come and sleep with Mom. And when he came to my bed, when he was with me in my bed, that was when I started to feel this tingling sensation all over my nipples. Then when I opened my eyes, I saw that all the old ladies that used to bewitch people with my grandmother, they were standing as they were surrounding my bed, and they said, we are here to bless you. Let him suck on your nipples as if he is a newborn baby. Then I took my son. At that time, he had fallen asleep because of the charms. Then my son, he started suckling on my nipples, and there was actually milk that was coming out. When he woke up in the morning, he was no longer that highly intelligent boy like his father. He was just like a zombie, my brother. I still breastfeed him. Right now, my son, he is 26 years old, and I am still breastfeeding him. My son does not have any desire to date anyone because he is like a child. He is like a child, and he is my protection. Hey, dear listeners, right there was a message that was sent to me by one of our listeners. You're breastfeeding your own son when she said, what, 26 years? He sleeps in the same bed with her son. Can you imagine?